I'm James Patrick, the director of Big Picture. In this third installment of my interview with Michael Cremo, the author of the book Forbidden Archeology, I asked him to give me an account of the history of the universe from a Vedic understanding. The Vedic texts are some of the most ancient in the world. They could possibly offer us a window into ancient histories long forgotten, but recorded in the Vedas. They're written in terms of cycles of history with fantastical sounding tales, often very hard to understand for a Westerner. Michael Cremo is one of the few people who can break it down in terms of our Western dating system and explain it in more simple terms. They tell us that our universe is more than 100 trillion years old. You've been studying the Vedic teachings for
40 or 50 years.
How far back do the histories go?
Well, it depends upon what time scales you're speaking about, because the Vedic concept of time is cyclical. So there are cycles within cycles within cycles. The largest cycle is the lifetime of Brahma, the demigod who arranges for the planetary systems and the bodies for conscious selves to occupy within a universe. He exists for one breath of Mahavishnu, because that's where the universe, not only this universe, but many, many other universes come from. According to the Vedic cosmological text, everything is personal in a consciousness-based universe. Normally, we don't think in those terms. We think of impersonal forces and laws of nature.
So they kind of phrase the years in terms of these characters?
Yeah. So a breath of Mahavishnu, he's lying in what's called the causal ocean. And he's in a state of trance called susupti. And as he breathes out, universes expand from his body, and when he breathes in, the universes come back into his body. So
this Vishnu is the ultimate God, huh?
No, not the ultimate God. It's the portion of God that's responsible for material reality, where we don't really belong. We belong in the eternal spiritual world. But if we're not in the proper state of consciousness to exist in that spiritual world, there's an alternative reality which is manifested by Mahavishnu to give us the opportunity to act out our desire to exist independently from God. And that, as I said, when he breathes out, the universes expand from the pores of his body. And when he breathes in, they contract back into his body. Now, when the universes are out there manifest, in each one, there's a demigod, Brahma, who's responsible for arranging the planetary systems and the kinds of bodies that conscious selves in those universes can operate. So Brahma's lifetime is one breath of Mahavishnu, one exhalation and inhalation. That's the lifetime of Brahma.
And that's 4 billion years?
That's equivalent to 311 trillion, 40 billion of our years.
311 trillion.
Of our years.
Okay.
And according to the Vedic cosmological calendar, we're now in the first day of the 50th year of Brahma's lifetime. So that lifetime of Brahma is calculated according to months and days. A day of Brahma's lifetime is 4,320,000,000 years. That, and we're in the first day of the 50th year of Brahma's life in our universe.
So the first day of the 50th year, so that means the universe has lasted how long until
About
now?
150 trillion years.
Is how old this one universe is.
Right.
But there's multiple universes.
Well, we have to consider that although the universe may be there, the information and structures within it can be manifest and unmanifest. It's like if you have a computer disk, you can fill it with information and then you can erase it. You can restore it, erase it. You know, it's the same hard drive, you could say, but you can wipe it out, you can reboot it and fill it up again with programs. So that's happening with our universe. The basic structure of it is there, but all the different planetary systems within it, during a lifetime of Brahma, during each night of Brahma's lifetime, the universe contents become wiped. And when his next day starts, it's remanifested. So a day of Brahma lasts for 4,320,000,000 years. According to the Vedic cosmological calendar, we're about halfway through the present day of Brahma. And within a day of Brahma, there's a cycle of 1,000 repeating cycles of 4 subcycles. Each one of those lasts 4,320,000,000 years. You take 1,000 of them, that's a day of Brahma. You take a day of Brahma times 30 for a month of Brahma, times 12 for a year of Brahma, times 100 for his whole lifespan. That's 311,040,000,000,000 years.
Brahma's whole lifespan?
His whole lifetime.
Okay.
So
I'm getting confused. We got, what is the ultimate God in
the ultimate God in this system is called Krishna. He exists beyond all these cycles of past, present, and future. He exists in an eternal realm beyond creation and destruction, manifestation and unmanifestation, beyond time, which is made of past, present, and future. He exists in an eternal present. And that's where we're also meant to exist. But because we've decided to independently operate, we're given a field in which to do that. Mm-hmm. But the nature of it is that it's subject to the influence of time, which means we identify with a material body that is subject to time. It comes into being at a certain point in time. It stays for a certain amount of time, and then it disintegrates.
And what's the purpose of that?
Purpose is to allow us to try to act independently of God and learn that it never results in us being completely satisfied or happy because of the temporary nature of everything that we try to create, enjoy, control.
But what's the purpose of us to be here? To learn something through free will, or?
Well,
we have the amnesia of this reality.
Well, the opportunity is always there to come to our natural state of consciousness where we can exist without any threat or fear of non-existence. People in the material world, or conscious selves, I should say, because the conscious self can be present not just in the human bodily vehicle, but in other forms of bodily vehicles, plant, animal, and so on. So the purpose of going through all those different kinds of embodiments up to the human form is to show us that no matter how we try to enjoy ourselves apart from God in the world of matter, we're never going to achieve what we want, what we really strive for, which is permanent existence, full knowledge, kind of being beyond any kind of misinformation and fake news and whatever. We want to be in touch with the truth of situations and people and proclamations. We want to know what's the real truth. We don't want to be deceived. We also want happiness. We want existence. We want truth. We want happiness. It's why people do things, because it makes them happy, or they think they'll achieve something that will allow them to be happy, like money or fame or
But they often
whatever.
find it doesn't make them happy. Yeah.
Well, even if it does, it's temporary. I mean, I can point to many people who, from the external point of view, are happy from their point of view. But what inevitably happens, if what makes them happy is their ability to attract favorable attention because of either their beauty or their strength or their wisdom or whatever quality we're talking about, that quality will eventually deteriorate. It's just the nature of anything material, whether it's the body, whether it's any position at all one tries to achieve within the world of matter. It's temporary. And because of that...
Where do the Vedic writings come from? Or
Well, the Vedic writings are characterized by the term apaurushaya, which means they're not produced by a person within this material world. They come from outside of the material world.
this is kind of like Akashic record type concept?
Sort of, that's a version of it. But it's based on the idea that there is a conscious, individual, personal God, you could say, that possesses the knowledge necessary for us to achieve a platform of being qualified to exist on that same eternal level. He's capable, he has that knowledge, he's capable of expressing it, which he does in the form of transcendental sound, which descends to this level of reality through channels of spiritual teachers who are representatives of that God, you could say. I kind of don't like to use the word soul and God because sometimes people think, well, that's religion. And religion requires belief or faith, and I'm just not into that. I just want to know directly what is real.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I prefer to say conscious self, because we can all experience that. We are conscious. Nobody can deny that they're conscious. It's our most direct experience. It doesn't require any faith. It doesn't require any belief. It's just perfectly obvious. And that consciousness, as we experience it directly, is individual and personal. We're all persons with our particular likes and dislikes, our taste in music, our taste in food, our taste in clothes, our taste in art, culture. We're persons. And we're also individual. We're not all one. I mean, I have my consciousness of my existence, and each of you hearing this have your own individual consciousness and opinion about what I'm saying. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. Each individual has their own consciousness. Now, based on that, I think it's not an unreasonable proposition to think that the source of all these individual, personal, conscious entities, which we are and which we can experience, must be something like that. And that means he has the ability to communicate. Of course, when I say he, it may sound patriarchal, but actually the form of God in the tradition that I follow is both masculine and feminine. If you go to a Krishna temple, you'll always find Krishna with his energy, which is considered female. And actually, in speaking about God, we say Radha Krishna. Radha being the energy of God, and Krishna being the personality of God. So, but anyways, because it's customary to speak of God in masculine terms, I'm doing it. But that supreme individual conscious person has the ability to communicate. And because he wants every soul to experience its full potential, and at the same time respect its freedom to not be with him, but to be an independent enjoyer, he allows each conscious self that freedom of choice to be with him or not be with him. Mm-hmm. You know, because love of God is the ultimate goal, and love can't be forced. It's an option that's presented to someone. If I force somebody to love me, that's a crime. So God doesn't do that. He offers the opportunity, which it is up to each individual conscious self to accept. And he provides all the information and the method for achieving love of God. It's there, but you have to want it and voluntarily take it up. It's not something that can be forced. So I think this system is when I think about it, it's the best way to arrange things while respecting independence and free will. That there's no forced.
So we're spun into an existence through God wishing to feel himself exist through us, but we have free will, but we have amnesia of this greater reality.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good way to...
So with the amnesia and the combination of amnesia and free will, then the merit of our actions take value?
Well, by free will, we can take advantage of the opportunity that's always there for us. Or we can continue to remain in the amnesiac state. But that's the purpose of what are called avatars. Avatar means one who descends from a higher level to a lower level.
Like incarnation?
Yes.
So
like
we're all avatars of our souls? Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that there are avatars of God that come to make the teachings that would help us wake up from our amnesia. They are available to us if we want. And I'm not saying that it's just my tradition. I think such facility can be found in all of the great spiritual traditions of the world, most of which I think have an exoteric and an esoteric aspect to them. You know, the exoteric aspect may involve, you know, certain rituals and practices that may be different than others. But on the more esoteric plane, I think in every tradition you'll find that there's some mystical aspect to it that involves some kind of meditation or prayer or contemplation or spiritual discipline, whether it's the types of practices that medieval nuns and monks in Christianity practice, or the more esoteric manifestations of Jewish spiritual tradition, or Buddhist, or the Protestants also had their mystics. Mm-hmm. So I think you can find this wisdom and this opportunity for transcending this level of reality in many different places. I don't claim to have a monopoly on truth.
Do you think some call it like the mystery schools or the golden thread, or that I guess in Masonry they talk about that a lot, that all the world's religions speak the word of God. Do you find that? Do you agree with that, or?
Well, yes, in this sense. I wrote a book, Human Devolution, a Vedic alternative to Darwin's theory. And in that book, I propose that before we ask the question, where did human beings come from, we should first of all ask the question, what is a human being? And modern science will say we're machines made of molecules, basically in competition with each other for survival. But if we carefully study the matter, we see we've got a material body, that's part of what we are, but we also have a kind of mental body. You know, we comment on the state of our mind. Today I'm feeling very lethargic, or my mind is all splayed out about something, or today I'm feeling really focused. My mind is really focused. So there's not just the gross physical body, there's a mental body as well. But then there is the I who is saying, I feel my mind, I feel my body. That I is the actual conscious self. And that can exist apart from matter. So just as we have, in terms of our own existence, a tripartite structure of matter, mind, and consciousness, or spirit, if you like that term. The universe itself has that tripartite structure.
And when you say universe, what are you referring to exactly?
Well, the cosmos,
Is that all the physical reality or the hierarchies above the physical?
This would include both the physical, the mental, and the purely spiritual.
Okay, so you're thinking there's like Krishna, and he created these demigods that are in charge of these different universes, and these universes include a spiritual, mental, and physical worlds, like a whole hierarchy of dimensionality.
The whole hierarchy is the first three things that you mentioned. That there's a level of the cosmos that's dominated by gross physical elements. And that's where we find ourselves now. Then beyond that, there's a realm of more subtle mental energies, intellectual energies, that is inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there. And down through the ages, people have had different names for them. Angels, gods, goddesses, jinn. There are different names that different cultures have attached to them. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, there is the level of pure consciousness or spirit, and it's inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there. Mm-hmm. So if we look at the different cosmologies in the world, we see that they generally have this tripartite structure, that there's a world of matter, there's a world of demigods or angels, and then there's a purely spiritual level of reality ruled by some kind of supreme conscious being.
So this like Trinity concept in a lot of religions, is that a metaphor for that?
That's usually Trinity concept refers to an idea about different features of God. And I think there is some logic to that. Okay. In the Vedic cosmology, there are three aspects of the supreme conscious being. One of them is called super soul, means the presence of God in the heart of each living thing. Actually, within every atom, God is present as a witness. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, there is the all-pervading energy of God, the white light, the Brahman. And then beyond that is the actual personality of Godhead. So there are those three features of God. I've heard some people try to compare it to the Christian Trinitarian concept of Father, Son, Holy Ghost.
Mm-hmm. But you don't find that satisfying, or it just seems a little petty?
What was that?
It seems unsatisfying to you, or not a good analogy?
Well, I think there may be something to it. It's not, I think, a perfect analogy, but it has the idea that God has different features that may be revealed to a person who approaches God by a certain path. Mm-hmm. Like someone may meditate on God in the heart, in the hearts of all living things. Okay. Some can appreciate the presence of God by his expansive effulgence everywhere.
In the Vedic cosmology, how old is the universe in a word?
Well, according to the Vedic cosmology, the basic structure of the universe is about 150 trillion years out of a total time for its existence of 311 trillion, 40 billion years. The structures within the universe is like a sphere of spherical shape, and within it there are different planetary systems and different kinds of living entities inhabiting them. That internal structure goes through different phases of manifestation and non-manifestation. So in the current phase of creation, you might call it, or manifestation of life forms and planets on which they exist within the shell of the universe, that is about 2 billion years old.
And how many living beings like us, varieties of them, do the Vedas say exist?
8,400,000.
Different kinds of entities like us?
Different kinds of bodily vehicles for conscious selves to occupy.
This kind of 8 million species?
8 million non-human species, 400,000 human species. Now, when I say species, it's not exactly like the modern biological concept of species, which they have a hard time with. Actually, there are about 30 or 40 different species definitions, because they've never really been able to come to any understanding of what a species actually is. In the Vedic concept, a species is an arrangement of senses, subtle senses grouped around the mind that provide the sensory inputs and outputs that allow us to understand our position and act in an interactive way with the material elements.
So when you say there's 8 million different kinds of what, quote unquote, aliens or something like that, right?
No.
Or
what I'm saying is in the universe, but we could confine it to this planet if we want. We could say there are 8 million different kinds of sensory experiences that are available through different kinds of bodily vehicles. You know, just like you have maybe computers with different kinds of interactive abilities to perceive.
You mean animals then?
Yeah, plants, animals, insects.
8 million varieties of living plants and animals and humans.
Plants, animals, insects, amoebas.
And that's in the whole universe?
They would cover the entire universe.
And then as far as 400,000 humans, are you saying humanoid?
Human-like species.
So that would mean there's kind of
That
like
means
Star Trek,
kinds of bodies.
like Star Trek, all the different kinds of.
Yeah, different, and that would include, you know, angels, demigods, jinn, you know, all different types of humanoid creatures.
Huh. Okay. So wrap your head around that, and then so we live in a 100 trillion year old universe but in our But this world we live on here, this planet is too how many
Well,
billion?
we may not see every type of living thing here, but the type of bodily vehicle that a conscious self gets, and that's one thing we have to understand about any of these forms, they are vehicles for conscious selves to get a certain type of experience, which should be educational for them. But all of them may not be visible here. Like, we don't see Tyrannosaurus rex bodies around us in living form these days. That's because there are no conscious cells that require that type of body. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are certain clothing companies, computer companies, they only make something when an order comes in for it, like Dell Computers or something. They have all the parts and plans for all different types of computers, but they don't actually make one until somebody orders it. Mm-hmm. So if in the world, on our planet, at this time and place, there are a certain number of conscious selves that have different desires, different karma, sometimes we call it, that are appropriate for different kinds of bodily vehicles. The types of bodily vehicles that would be manifest in this world would be linked to the karma of the conscious selves. If there are conscious selves that require bodies of dinosaurs, they'll be there.
So that always kind of confused me in the concept of reincarnation. I understand a person going to a person again, or all the different experiences, but like what is the soul of a plant, or like a broccoli, or the soul of a chipmunk? I mean,
well,
what are they meant to learn being an eggplant?
Yeah. Well, according to the Vedic cosmology, it's in the human bodily vehicle is special, because in the human bodily vehicle, we have the intelligence to be accountable for our actions, whereas a chipmunk may not have the intelligence to be responsible for its actions. So that human bodily vehicle is the one in which we can become, if we exercise our free will properly, qualified to enter the spiritual level of reality.
So we're right at the edge of the spiritual?
But yes, but if we don't use the human bodily vehicle properly, we lose that opportunity and are placed in another type of bodily vehicle that's more appropriate for our level of consciousness. Then the progression from that bodily vehicle back to the human form is more or less automatic. You're not being held responsible for your activities as a chipmunk, but you're working off gradually your karma until you again come to the human form. Okay. But the human form, like I said, it's a very advanced type of vehicle. And and you require a license for it.
So we have a lot of responsibility here.
Like if you drive a car, you have to have a license. If you're a pilot, you have to have a pilot's license. If you misuse the vehicle in such a way that you put yourself in danger and other people in danger, you'll lose your license.
Can we put the Forbidden Archaeology book in the light of this other understanding?
Okay.
What does the Appreciating Extreme Human Antiquity do for our consciousness?
Well, in Forbidden Archaeology, I'm simply dealing with stones and bones. In other words, I'm dealing with archaeological discoveries that contradict the current understandings in the scientific world about human origins and antiquity. And that in itself doesn't really, to me, add up to very very much. So what's significant to me is that it means we need alternative explanations. And the most satisfactory ones are the ones that involve consciousness, because that goes beyond the stones and bones of archaeology. It takes us into another realm. And then we have to ask ourselves the questions, well, how as a conscious being did I come in contact with this material body that will eventually be left as bones to become fossils, perhaps? What does the conscious self have to do with that? Who am I really? Where am I now? Where do I belong? Where should I be going? It leads, the archaeological evidence leads, strangely enough, into a realm that goes beyond the archaeology of stones and bones, and more into the archaeology of consciousness, where we have to dig deeply into ourselves and focus on who we really are and what our purpose in life is, what our values and goals should be like. And I think that these are very important realizations for conscious selves, for people in our society today. It's not just a matter for some scholars and scientists to discuss in their ivory towers. These matters affect all of us, because our sense of identity helps determine what our goals, our values, and objectives in life are. And right now, through the monopoly they have in the education system, scientists committed to a basically or fundamentally materialist, physicalist concept of who we are and where we came from are able to, practically speaking, dictate to us our sense of identity. And it's a very materialistic identity that they're promoting, that we're purely material beings and that matters of the spirit and the soul of consciousness are not very important.
Well, not to. Here's another question. I'll probably put it in a different spot as well. But why is it that bad people get away with murder? This is a classic religious question, right? So why do evil people rule the world? Why do bad people get away with murder and then good people suffer? I mean, it's these classic spiritual questions.
Well, yes, those are questions that have troubled a lot of people. And I don't know if I can give an answer that will satisfy everyone, but one that satisfies me is that ultimately God doesn't want us to be in this world where such things happen. That was our decision, to be independent from God. And when I say independent, I mean not only being an atheist or whatever, but being a believer in God for basically selfish purposes. In other words, a materialist will strive after material wealth, material power, material influence, at the cost of others. And, a person who is also somewhat selfishly motivated may pray to God, give me the power, give me the wealth, give me the ability to defeat all of my enemies, give me the ability to exploit. Mm-hmm. So if that mentality is prominent, then bad things are going to happen, even in the name of sometimes religion or nationalism or world peace or whatever.
Yeah, we've seen it before, right?
Yes. But we shouldn't be here in this situation. But because we are, and we're held responsible for all of our activities, whether they're committed in this lifetime, which should be a very narrow perspective in my opinion. We have to take into account our activities in perhaps millions of lifetimes.
So as we sit sort of on the edge of a potential another world war, and I mean, drum beating of civil war narrative in this country, and feels like everyone's getting pitted against each other, in a very confusing time we're living in, right? What advice would you have for people in conducting themselves in such a scenario?
Well, just because it's going to rain, it doesn't mean you have to get wet. You can shelter yourself and others. I mean, we see that's happened if we look at the great wisdom traditions of the world. Sometimes a personality like Noah sees the oncoming devastation and prepares and survives and prospers. So that lifeboat, you could say, is being provided if we want to take advantage of it. But I would say that to really get at the root of these things and make this material world a place where such things don't happen to the extent that they are appearing to do these days, we need to come to an understanding that we're all beings of pure consciousness. We all come from the same source. There isn't any need to divide ourselves up into competing groups based on superficial identification with various aspects of our material bodily vehicles, be it in terms of race, gender, nationality, religious orientation, whatever. If we can appreciate that, then that would be a step forward. And in a society that is based on that principle of identifying with the conscious self, which is not black or white or yellow or any of the types of racial distinctions one wants to make. It's not of any particular class. It's not of any particular nationality. It's ultimately on the spiritual level of existence. It's not of any particular religion. If that can be achieved, then people could live together cooperatively and satisfy their material needs in the most simple, natural, efficient, fair, and just way possible, while putting most of our human energy into developing the resource of consciousness, with the idea of transcending this level of reality and achieving a state beyond time, beyond ignorance of all kinds, beyond all types of suffering.
And so the practice is to feel that in yourself?
Feel it in yourself and recognize it in others, and realize it's all coming from somewhere.
Wow.
From a benevolent personality.
Well, great. That's pretty. How you feeling?
Sounds pretty utopian.
Yeah. So you think we just reincarnate again and again to try to taste this in an effort through free will and amnesia to come to these sense of spiritual peace?
Generally, when someone has a revelation, it's like they understand that they are in a position that depends on the mercy of God. Really, it means understanding I'm not the supreme controller. Mm-hmm. Now, somebody may occupy a high position in government or an influential position in some field of human endeavor, be it sports or business or culture or education or science. Mm-hmm. You may be recognized, you may be in a position of influence and power, so to speak. But if it's done for the purpose of helping people realize their true identity and their true purpose in life, and helps them take on the values and goals and procedures that foster that sort of thing, then, that's good. That's, but that means understanding in one sense that I'm not the master of all I survey. I'm a servant. I can be an instrument, mm-hmm. and that is, the perfection of life.
So, in contrast to the kind of dense materialism today, with the money and the stuff, like in the U.S. and now this desire to conquer death and consciousness through machines, and now this push of AI and
yes,
it's sort of how would you characterize all that?
Money in itself is not bad. It depends how it's used. For example, I know a wealthy person who contributes very liberally to activities like building institutions to help educate people about these principles. Mm-hmm. So it's not that having money in itself is an obstacle, it's how one uses it. If one uses it in a way that doesn't foster real self-realization and God realization, then you could say it's not really appropriate. But even that has different levels. Sometimes people who have abilities and resources will contribute to what they think is a charitable cause, like helping people who are hit by a disaster. I mean, that's good, that should be done. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, as long as a conscious self is in the world of matter, it's going to confront the disaster and destruction, even if only one's own inevitable death and rebirth. That's so if someone is using their wealth to do that, well, that's very good. You'll take your next birth in a very auspicious position, a very nice, educated family, pious family, but still you're in the cycle of birth and death. So whether one is using one's abilities and resources for materially good or materially bad purposes, you're in the cycle of birth and death.
You know, I always felt like that we always face all these challenges, each of us in life, and they feel almost insurmountable at times, you know? But I realize that it's almost like each experience we go through is especially tailored for our soul.
Yes.
To feel insurmountable, but we actually do have the stuff in us to overcome those challenges. But it seems sometimes it seems overwhelming, but it's like the stuff's there and it's like tailor-made just for us to be able to overcome it. And sometimes we don't, and then we fail and die, and sometimes we do, and that's kind of the myth of the hero's journey, you know, of overcoming the opponent. Do you have any comment on that? Or?
Well, yes, I think there is a narrative for all of us. There's a arc of character development. You know, it's definitely there. And I really resonate with the idea that there seem to be things that are designed especially for us. To me, it's one of the most convincing proofs of God's existence, that God knows everyone's heart. He knows the thing that can really get you. And sometimes it's a very specific thing. You know, like you do something and you get some reaction to it that is totally appropriate, like individually designed for you. But at the same time, there are also opportunities that are presented to you that you can tell are specifically tailored and designed to give you a chance to take the next step. Mm-hmm. And I also see that in my life, that God, or whatever supreme being there is, has put steps in front of me that I have taken, because I can see it's definitely in my ballpark. It's like it was personally designed for me as a next step to take. So let me take that next step and see what God allows. I think God also knows how much success I can take, because the temptation, when you're successful, is to become enamored of the trappings of success, whether it's fame or wealth or power. It's something that can be distracting. So if I judge where I am as a person who's expressing himself through literature and trying to communicate knowledge, if I look at the whole spectrum of influence, and through influence and fame and respect through that sort of endeavor, I can see, okay, I'm at a certain level. Mm-hmm. But I think that level is appropriate for where I am. I've got enough what I need. It's like air, enough to breathe.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time, huh? I really appreciate all your work, and
Thanks.
I think it was a very enlightening conversation, huh?